So I welcome everybody to this next session of Friday Fundamental, which has become over a period of time a flagship program for Bombay Management Association. And my compliments to our team, BMA team, and also our participants that we successfully transited to the online programs and has been successful. And over a period of time, speakers from varied class of society and from across the world have been coming and sharing their knowledge with our members. And today's speaker is Dr. Meenu Sareen, who is an industrial psychologist and HR expert. And the topic is, when I read the topic, I was really curious actually to know, because this is the hot topic today, whether it's right sizing or downsizing, a new way of life. Every day we are hearing that somebody is laying off 1,000 people or 12,000 people, under one text or performance or slowness of orders, whatever may be the reason. But we call it downsizing or right sizing. I think Dr. Meenu is the right person to tell us about the whole thing. And I have a privilege to introduce her. Dr. Sareen has over 30 years of experience in academic training and development, HR consulting, and executive coaching. She conducts training programs on core HR topics and also behavioral skills training. Her training and development clients are from varied industries, starting from banks, insurance, large PSUs. She's also skilled in executive coaching, has conducted these sessions for various companies. She teaches HR specialization papers in prominent B schools for MBA and executive MBA courses. Her special area of work in career transition coaching. She's trained competency assessor, has successfully conducted several assessment centers. She's PhD in industrial psychology, and her key competence areas are designing and developing competency framework, competency assessment, organizational development, and executive coaching. Welcome, Dr. Meenu, to the program. And I must say that this is the shortest introduction I gave for any speaker, but the most powerful. Within one paragraph, you have covered practically everything, and it talks a lot about your experience and the kind of enriching discussion which we are looking forward to. And as Dr. Meenu said, that we would like to keep this session as an interactive section. So my earnest request to participants is, please ask questions, participate, share your thoughts. Dr. Meenu, all is yours.
Thank you for your kind words, Rajeshji. I am looking forward to this session. And yes, I was putting my thoughts together. I would like to dedicate this session actually to Supriya Sachdev's mother. Reason being, Supriya's mother and I have been friends since we were 2.5 years old. So we don't even remember, when we met, how we met. And when Supriya, you call her Miss Sachdev or whatever, but I call her Supriya.
Call her Supriya.
When she got in touch with me and said, Masi, can you speak? I did not know how to say no to her. But, it is, I'm a feeling of pride that, when your children say that, can you speak for us? So that is why I thought that I would like to dedicate this session to Mantu Sachdev, that is Supriya's mother. And she would be also very proud, because I was always the very talkative one and she was always the sober one. Incidentally, her mother is a good speaker and she speaks on spiritual topics and a very interesting speaker. So taking this session forward, I know when Rajeshji said downsizing is happening, 1,000 people or 10,000 people, because just now there was a news alert which said Byju's has downsized another 1,000 employees,
yes.
And the second downsizing in a year. So, that is just the trend. And somehow, though, Rajeshji, you and I also say, you said what I told you about me, that yes, I am an academician, I am a trainer, I am an HR consultant, I'm a competency expert. But today's session, I am taking it forward more from the perspective of a coach. As an executive coach, I do a lot of career transition coaching. And all these names that you have been hearing in the media, in the news so far, whether you call it Amazon, Meta, all these names that you have been hearing, uh, all these are the kind of companies where I end up, coaching. They are my coaches, they are my clients. So I try to give meaning to this whole process. Though I get one side of the story, that is the story of the coachee. But to be an effective coach, I have to look at the other side of the perspective, that what is the need of an organization, what is uh, that HR thinks that if they decide to downsize twice in a year, those are the questions that always keep coming to my mind. And yes, regarding the coaches, there are so many different kinds of stories that I would like to share with my participants today. As Before the participants joined in, I was telling Rajeshji and Oindrila that this is more of a conversation session where we are not being judgmental. We do not want to talk about, right, wrong, but we do want to understand the perspectives so that, we are better prepared to handle these situations as an organization, as HR, and who knows, as employees. It could be, since I freelance, so my turn will never come. But those of you who are in paid professions, it could be for any one of you, us. Not that I wish it, but that is becoming a fact of life. So that is why, I thought, since this is a raging topic, especially in this past 1 month, we've had Amazon, we've had Meta. Meta was slightly more than a month ago, but then Google, then Microsoft, then Spotify, then Salesforce, you name it. And, these are the names which have come in the media. Those which do not come in the media, since I coach, I would not like to, take names for privacy reasons, but I would keep sharing examples. So my request to you, Rajesh ji, for sure, you being senior, and also to the participants is that yes, we are not getting into judgmental. कि ये गलत हुआ, ये ठीक हुआ. No, the nation does not want to know this. We simply are here in a self-understanding mode that how do we tackle it in our various roles. So I am not aware what particular role that each one of you is holding in the organization, but I'm sure some of you are part of the management, some of you are part of HR, and some of you are employees, and some of you probably have done this exercise in the organization. I do not wish it, but maybe, some of you have actually faced it in the near future. So this is, the thought that comes to my mind. And this is what I would, uh, and this is the reason, the session is simply built on my experiences and also on my recent experiences so as to maintain the contemporariness of this topic. I'm not going to talk about, hamare zamane mein tab aisa hua, because that no longer holds true even when it comes to managing people. The trends have been changing drastically and dramatically. So वो हमारे ज़माने की बात नहीं करेंगे. Let us talk about a lot of recent trends, and I have not gone through a lot of, analytical data that is available in the news, the media, etc., purposely so as to keep the biases away, because the analytical data largely is the perspective of one media house or could be that of a writer. We are here with a very neutral standpoint, and that is how we will take our discussion forward, our conversation forward, and that is how we would like to exit from this discussion also. But a very brief about, this trend, though I did say that this hiring, firing is a new trend, but I remember I started getting into executive coaching and more into career transition coaching about 10, 11 years ago. And, it was a very quiet affair. Sometimes, the media would get a whiff of it. And that time also, I would still not like to name my clients. They were huge multinationals, very big names in the industry, big names. Even today, people would give their right and left arm to join that organization. It was happening then also. Sometimes the media would get the whiff of it, and there would be a small article somewhere, oh, XYZ company has downsized. But it was a very quiet affair, and it wasn't announced, in such a big way. And I, for no sure, since I'm part of this industry, I for sure know that even prior to these 11 years of my experience, downsizing has been going on in many major MNC organizations for sure. The reasons, yes, many a times were performance, yes. And many a times it used to be that the company was, these were generally the top heavy companies where the attrition rate was always less. So these were the companies, they would constantly restructure. I do know of two, three big names where this happened periodically, say every 4 years or so. So this kind of restructuring happened in these organizations, but it was never a big announcement. But so when I started my career as an as a career transition coach, initially, I had this worry, कि इसको नौकरी कौन देगा? Who will give this person a job? Because the person, the company will think that why was he fired? Why was she fired? And, those were the pre-pandemic days. So all meetings, discussions and interviews used to be face-to-face discussions. So in most of the cases, I would tell the coaches, please carry the performance review sheets of the last 2, 3 years with you so that you can justify that it is not your fault. But now, yes, things are changed. The new trend is that downsizing is done with bells and whistles. There are announcements done where the CEOs and top bosses also talk to the media, and then they say, oh, we are letting so many people go and these are the reasons, or XYZ. So which practically legitimizes this affair. Because if the CEO is saying that we are downsizing, or the top bosses are saying, talking to the media, reputed companies, so then it becomes a legitimate affair that this is what the trend is. Take it or leave it, but this is how it is. So it has become an acceptable norm. So that is the reason I thought, can we have a conversation on this to discuss, since this practice has become legitimate, that how an organization can make it a more better process, a more effective process, how HR can do a better job, and how an employee needs to be prepared for this. Because now we cannot say for sure that, oh, I will work till the age of 60. A career could come to an end at age 42, 45, unless one has actively prepared for it. So keeping this background in mind, the conversation is divided into three sections. The first section is the section of organization. The second section is the section of HR. And the third section is the section of employee. I think, for sake of convenience, every time I introduce a particular section, we would like the participants to come forward with their viewpoints, with their perspectives. Certainly, we are not making this into a debate, not questioning, oh, how could you say that? Or Meenu is right and Rajesh is wrong. It is nothing like that. These perspectives and viewpoints finally will lead to some kind of a semblance of uniformity in thought process. That is the idea. So today's session, I will actually handle it just like I would handle a coaching session, with a lot of patience, and let us talk about it, a kind of a dialogue, a one-to-one dialogue. Now, any questions or any viewpoint or perspective so far? Any of the past participants? Yes?
Just one question from my side, Kayur here.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
most of this layoff we have seen in IT sector and that too in USA. So any particular reason or they are anticipating too
That is
early?
that is why theory we are talking about. And as we proceed further, I would like to tell you that they started the game, but now it is a Me Too movement. वो जैसे कुछ साल पहले Me Too movement शुरू हुआ था, which started from Hollywood and then came to Bollywood, then to Indian politics also. It is just like that. It is not limited to IT only.
Right, please. Yeah, please
Yeah,
continue, ma'am.
yeah. So I Kevur, to taking forward your question, like you said, is it the IT sector alone? Uh, just when I was going to talk from the organization's perspective, that they set the ball rolling, but then every organization thought, oh, now it is my chance. So I have handled organizations who are core, conservative, traditional industries. For sake of privacy, certainly no names given, but certainly those companies, where an employee joins at the age 17, 18 after doing his technical diploma, and then works for the organization for 20 years, 22 years, 25 years, and suddenly now the organization decides that okay, we need to reduce our workforce. So हिंदी में बोलते हैं बहती गंगा में हाथ धोते हैं, और Hollywood words में it is probably a Me Too movement. So these people were generally were shocked, taken aback, and wondering that all these years this has never happened. Why this has happened now? So in most of these cases, these employees, yes, were complacent. There was no CV in place. They did not know where to go from here. But then this is what the purpose of this session today is, that we need to be prepared. So what the question that comes to my mind, that is this downsizing, is it a fad, or is it a necessity, or is it both? This is a question that probably organizations now need to ask, because is the solution to any issue that an organization is facing, is the solution to that downsizing only? That is a question that needs to be asked by the organizations. Or can this be handled differently? Certainly, things have changed in the recent years. Traditionally, we always talked about organizations growing organically, just like we grow as human beings. एक दिन 16 साल के होते हैं, फिर दूसरे दिन 17 साल के होते हैं, और एक दिन इतने बड़े हो जाते हैं that your old children someday, like Supriya, request that would you like to come and speak for us? So this is natural progressive growth. But today's environment, the companies are constantly striving to grow inorganically, because it is kind of important for them. The environment is so dynamic that if they wait for progressive growth, probably they might not survive. So in this race of growing fast, in this race of inorganic growth, you need talent. So companies acquire and retain talent, and this talent comes at a very heavy price. Many a times when I'm talking to people, of course, they are my coaches, a person who is just with, I say, how old? 22, 23, 24, package 45 lakhs. And I am not lying. I will not take names, but I am not lying. So when the human capital cost is so high, then any kind of a jolt to the business, the first attempt to cost cutting certainly would be your big ticket item. And then, it is the HR that gets impacted, the human talent that gets impacted, then it is you and I who get impacted. Again, there is nothing about right or wrong. That person said, ma'am, you think it is too high. I said, probably you deserved it. That's why you were getting it. He did not steal. He did not put a gun on this guy's forehead, ke mujhe itne paise do. But this is a trend. So that is, the equation and game has changed. So if the situation is tough, you just address the big ticket item and you say, slash this cost. So hence, behold, you and I, we lose our jobs. I will here not get into, there is a very popular debate happening on LinkedIn and WhatsApp these days between Tim Cook versus the rest of the industry. How Tim Cook told his management that he wants to, reduce his package by so and so. No two industries and companies can be compared on an equal basis. Their assignments would be different, their investment on human capital would be different, and so on and so on. All those things would be different. So certainly, that debate, according to me, it is interesting read, but to make sense out of that debate, for me, it is meaningless. I did read it peripherally, but I did not want to waste time on understanding the parameters and everything. But yes, some questions do come to my mind, and I am seeking those answers from all my participants present here. The one question that comes to my mind, that a typical example, say, of Amazon. Amazon announced around last month that they would be downsizing by 10,000 employees globally. And then in a span of 2 weeks, suddenly this news alert came, Amazon to downsize 18,000. And I thought, 18,000 or? And then when I read the fine print, it meant 10,000 to be increased to 18,000. But we have to understand that psychologically, they have downsized twice, because twice they made that news. So these are some questions that come to my mind, that should organizations do this differently? Yes. So though, since I am from this industry, so I do know for sure that yes, losing one's job is a very big thing. But yes, the bigger companies I'm talking about, the smaller ones, since I don't handle them, I am not much aware also. But I do keep getting views on that also. But generally, the companies do have genuine humane practices also. The news of downsizing comes, but many of these companies also rehire the employees. Not all, but as and when a position comes vacant in this process of restructuring, a lot of rehiring also happens. So some of these employees are absorbed back, which in HR, those participants from HR who are present in today's discussion, we call it in-placement. Certainly, these companies actively go in for outplacement services also, get in touch with companies to help them with their separating employees with outplacement, to help them to get into, their next role as smoothly and as fast as possible. So that is there. Most of these companies have attractive separation packages also. In some cases, where I have coached my coachee and said, if given an opportunity, you should go back. The person has actually said, when this offer was made, it was so attractive, I grabbed it because this amount helps me to pay back my housing loan. So we cannot negate or forget those aspects that the organizations, yes, are taking care of. Yes, organizations are arranging for coaches, counselors for most of these employees, so that that mental strength is maintained and the trauma aspect is reduced, the separation trauma is reduced. All those things, yes, are in place. So, purposely I'm sharing both sides of the coin so that we are aware that, there is this aspect to it also that is there for sure. Before our participants start giving their inputs, one particular thought came to my mind that in India, yes, downsizing is a relatively recent trend. Downsizing, when you make an announcement, when you kind of legitimize it, rather than not make it quietly. So rather than make it quietly, uh, there are, when we talk about, we can learn from, take our examples from the Western countries where this has been a very normal practice. And it has been a normal practice for decades now. So they do have a practice of having an unemployment benefit program for employees. So where, when an employee is transitioning from one job to another, there is a provision of he or she getting some kind of state support. But that comes at a cost. These employees, monthly, the employee and the employer make small contributions towards creating this unemployment fund. So probably now is the time for us to think about these kind of practicalities. That just like, earlier, Rajesh ji, जब आप अपना corporate life सोचेंगे, उसमें कहीं contract letter never mentioned a severance package.
Not at all. And it was it was actually a marriage with the company.
Yeah. So, but now, the contract letter mentions the severance package along with it, that in case of, termination of services. So simply, probably we have to accept that fact that given this business scenario, this will be a way of life, and how to help not only the employee, but also their families that this employee supports to cope with this interim period when the separation is happening. I would like to invite the participants now for their set of inputs. Yes.
As a thought, I was just thinking that, is it a change which is coming overall, or is it a approach of the society, or is it some individualism thinking, or what it is that, what is happening? Fine, performance of the organization is important, and that's the reason for this downsizing, if we don't judge anything. But there is something more to it also, which is happening, because these things used to happen earlier as well.
Yeah, but they were quieter.
They were quieter. Now they are very.
Yeah. So that time there was no social media, when people never came to know about it. Nowadays, social media is there, so globally people come to know as to what is happening around.
Minute by minute.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Sareen.
Ma'am,
it has its advantages, because we do, the employee has records. The companies are more wary that the media is aware. So we have to follow the fair practices. So it has its advantages also. Yeah.
I have a request. Anybody who has to ask question. Sorry, 1 minute. I have a request. Anybody who has to ask question, you can raise hand. There is a. Otherwise, there will be a, that's the only thing. We can carry on. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Sareen. Thank you, Mr. Rajesh. So it was wonderful, actually. But there are two sides of the discussion also. But I think you touched a lot of points, and I'm just noting down some of the points. Like I just start that Rajesh mentioned, it was a marriage with the company. I mean, probably we have been probably trained in a very different fashion altogether. That this is our organization, probably this is our family kind of, gone are the days probably. People have to be trained in this is very professional approach altogether. I believe employees need to keep in mind that no, this organization are just a place to work probably. I mean, definitely you have to deliver professionally. Colleagues are not family members. Usually we term it family, sorry. Family is not like that. I may sound odd, but that's a fact.
But Devendra, we have to remember that marriages are also short-lived now.
Nowadays we have made it. Now. So again, a different discussion. But yes, so like you mentioned that there are two people who are impacted because of this kind of layoffs. Yes, it's actually entire family. If you think from the other perspective, it's entire family. Yes, there are organizations who do some rehire, outplacement. Those are the good organizations altogether. But I always think that why don't companies reuse their reserve funds? They have a lot of savings altogether. Why don't you use those funds to probably retain those employees and take this forward? You will remember some days back, there was a company, there was some financial error. Because of some financial error, there was some bad planning altogether, and they had to lay off.
Yeah.
Don't they plan properly, or just take employees granted? They can recruit and they can sack them anytime. It is not the case altogether. And like you mentioned, Western practices. See, Western, we have to always think that we cannot compare apple and orange. Still, India has a different culture altogether. And Western culture is different. Yes, the good practices we can follow. Good practices can be followed. I understand some kind of reserves from the employee side, but finally, employer also has some responsibilities. They have to keep that in mind. I think those are some different aspects which I always think that should be brought. And
maybe Devendra, now the circumstances of work, the work scenario circumstances have changed. That is also, the nature of industry has changed.
Let me put it that way. I think more organizations are more profit centric. Valuation, and valuation. If you talk about the startup and the mid-sized company, big organizations do take it seriously, no doubt. But typical small organizations do in that way only. I think I had just enough to share.
Yeah, but any suggestions other than this?
I think suggestion is for the employee side. Suggestion, I think you have been conducting a lot of workshops. That should be also for the employee side.
That is
they have to keep in mind. That they have to keep in mind. This is our organization place we to work. It is not family. We are professionally employed here. We are not going to get married altogether the way it used to be like that. But always be ready. And like you mentioned about training and development, it's a very critical aspect altogether. But you would believe that at a particular level, it is not possible for an employee to undergo some kind of training and development. Definitely, they are more experienced, and that is always valued.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else other than what Devendra has pointed out? So that means, these are the things that come to our mind as an employee. But anybody who is representing the management in the participants, if they have a viewpoint or a more moderate viewpoint or perspective from the management side.
Yes, madam. I am Muruganathan.
Yeah.
The company has to take care of the interest of the investors also. Their first responsibility is to the shareholders. So there is nothing wrong in firing the employees. Then the employees must specialize in different fields.
Yeah. So maybe, Mr. Muruganathan, when I come to the other part of the presentation, then you will also say that, these suggestions are pertinent suggestions. So yes, Mr. Muruganathan has pointed out very validly, because most of these, new age companies and IT companies, they have funding from VCs and so on and so on. So anybody who funds, these companies with so much of capital, probably the pressure of, performance and profits is a lot more. So yes, because everybody has their own perspective, both the parties have their own perspective. So from here, we move on to the, if there are no more suggestions, we move on to the next.
One sec, ma'am,
yes,
can I add? Like this company suddenly decide out downsizing and, like what happened in internationally, within 24 hours are immediately, downsizing, which is something, not very ethical in the sense that they don't realize suddenly that the company needs to downsize today. They would have seen it, a couple of months back. So they can give, so they could, give some time to the, employees also. Whoever decides to downsize it, it's not that they know 1 or 2 months in advance. They know very well in advance, much in advance, where they can, plan it. And, I was reading an article where one of the companies in America just had to downsize, some 20% of employees for some reason, because they were not getting orders or something. And then the CEO of the company decided that everybody will take 1 month without salary leave. And that's how they could survive for 1 year, and then they bounced back. And nobody lost the job, including the directors, including the CEOs. They said that anybody who wants to, everybody has to take 1 month leave without pay. So practically they were for 11 months and they worked for 12
so
months.
Rajendra, end of the day, patience pays probably.
Absolutely.
And this point that you are coming forward with, I would be touching upon it very, very shortly from the HR's perspective. And Rajendra, the point that you made, that these decisions are made suddenly, I do come across cases where a person has joined the company just 2 months ago. And then the company goes for downsizing and make big numbers.
Not only that, I also read that one person reached America from India to join the company, and same day he was asked that you are not going to be absorbed, you have to go back.
It is true.
This is something ridiculous.
So this is what this is what I am coming towards, moving towards the second phase of our conversation, that is the HR's job.
Right.
So like Rajendra, you just pointed out that you are informed. So I today was in a coaching session talking to a young girl from the IT company, and when in a session I was trying to understand from her that what was the reason for separation, how many people laid off, what were the what happened, and so on. So she said, I don't know anything. She says one particular day, she gave me a particular date, say for example 18th January. It was a normal work day. And then, that particular company, though headquartered for India, it is headquartered, it's say, for example, in a Bangalore or a Gurgaon, wherever. But most of the employees are working from home still. And she is located somewhere in Eastern India. And she says it started as a normal work day. I had my meetings with my clients. I was doing my work. And 11 o'clock, everything was interrupted. And I was told that you are no longer on the rolls of the company. And immediately, my system was jammed and everything was shut down. So, just like Rajendra, you were pointing, you have mentioned, suddenly, she has so many questions unanswered. So that is another thing. Then, since I would give a very interesting example. One of my coaches, say about 35, 36 years old, super talented, worked with an MNC IT company. His role was downsized. He took about a year or so to find his next job, joined that company, worked there for about 7-8 months. Then this old company got in touch with him and said they have a global role from him, of course, working from India itself. And he was tempted to join back because the profile was good. The package increase he got was about another 25-30%. And please, I'm telling true stories. I'm telling a story of about two weeks ago only. So these are not, old stories. And he joined the company. And 7 months later, he's downsized again. So when I connected for a session with him, the person kept, was upset. And he was raving, ranting, speaking. And I just sat, I listened to him quietly because I knew he had a right to speak like that. So once, that emotional thing was over, then I asked him that how can we undo any of this? No. The only question remains is how do we move forward from here? But yes, this is one question, like so many of you, like Devender, you have pointed out, that should HR handle this differently? That is something, especially, I think some of you did point out of giving an example of that there are alternative modes to downsizing also, where we can talk about pay cuts and so on and so on. So the question that comes to my mind is this downsizing some kind of a knee-jerk reaction? Projects come ho gaye, log nikalo, log nikalo, log nikalo. And I always thought that, this hiring and firing, everything comes at a cost. So are these costs, how are these costs calculated? And also we have to remember that, just like seasons come and go, the business trends are also cyclical, which means that today, if there is a slowdown, tomorrow there will be a high, then that means higher once again. And as an HR myself, the question that comes to my mind, like Devender, you pointed out, and like my coaches tell me that I can block their laptop system. I can take their laptop back. But what happens to the knowledge that they have acquired? So do we assess it from the perspective of not downsizing an employee, but losing talent? That is one question that comes to my mind. Because the knowledge that this person carries in his or her head, that I cannot keep it back with me. So when he walks out of the door, he's taking away that knowledge, the talent, the culture fit that he had with the company. So those questions, yes, do come to my mind. And yes, when I take it a little forward, then I would be talking about it further. Yeah, one thing that for sure is, this downsizing is like amputation. So when the doctor says कि इसमें organ में septicemia हो गया, इसको ampute करना है. So amputation is always sudden. It cannot be done slowly. So it has to be done in one go, so that the emotional turmoil is not a lingering turmoil. But the amputation has to be followed by pain management at some level. So is pain management happening or not? Those questions, yes, they remain. I will come to that later, just in a while. But like pointed out by you, Devender, that can we make this process less of knee-jerk and more of planning? Because like you point out, things don't happen suddenly. It doesn't rain suddenly. One sees the clouds coming. So why don't we? Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, Devendra.
Before you move forward, I wanted to add one point. When you started, you mentioned about the spiritual piece. I think your friend, spiritual, that part is very critical to this discussion also, because that spiritual part is missing in our life. And that's why we behave with others like that. And after 40, 45, we realize that it should not have been done that way. Why not we train, inculcate people from 20s like that? I just leave a thought. Please.
Yeah. Maybe when we talk about Devendra, the employee part of it, maybe we can talk of that aspect also. That maybe that can be one of the coping mechanisms. So, if you see the clouds coming, then should we not move towards a shelter? Should we not arrange for umbrellas and raincoats? Or do we wait for the downpour to happen and then we say, sab doob gaya, sab doob gaya? We are just working like Bombay Municipal Corporation. Sorry for saying that. I'm just saying it lightheartedly. This is how, the news comes to me, since I don't live in Mumbai. Okay, wo sab doob gaya, and why doesn't the local municipality and corporation plan about BMC plan about the expected monsoons in advance, so that this flooding and people getting stuck, local trains stopping, the upheaval is less in their lives. So similarly, we since I am from HR, those of you who are from HR here, we do talk about human resource planning. We do talk about human resource forecasting. We do talk about scenario forecasting. We do talk about combination workforce. Why do we need to have all full-time workforce? Some can be retainership, some can be part-time, so that the HR cost can be kept in check. As Devinder pointed out, we can look at downsizing options also, like salary reduction or work sharing, or lesser number of work days in a week, so that there is so those options, are they explored or not explored? Those are the things that come to one's mind. And also ensuring that when we are talking about cost cutting, that are other cost cutting measures first implemented before we actually start implementing cost cutting measures on human capital. I'm emphasizing the word capital, because I can keep your laptop, I can lock your account, but I cannot for sure hold on to the knowledge base that you have here. You will always walk away with it. So these are some questions that are raised. Based on my experience as an executive coach, organizations do try to, some organizations, not all, like I was giving the example of this girl I was talking to, girl or a lady I was talking to today morning. Whatever, yes, amputation is sudden, but for pain management, communication was important. That, this is what it is, but we will be supporting you. This is how long we will be supporting you. All those things need to be communicated. Secondly, yes, the in-placement programs help, for sure help. The outplacement programs help. A fair severance package, yes, for sure helps. Some things that the company can also look into is like something called extended health insurance support or so on. So that in this period of transition, if there is some kind of a health casualty for the employee or the family, at least, they are safely and securely covered. For sure, these coaching and counseling programs help. Because I coach not only entry level, I coach right up till CEO level positions. So the disturbance in the mind is equal for entry level as well as the top level positions, because probably the issues are the same. The entry level, at least the possibility of getting the next role sooner is there. But the more senior you are, the lesser are the positions available to you. So that dilemma is there for that person, that will my career suddenly come to an end now? So those perspectives are there. I throw the house open to my participants now for your suggestions. Anything to be conveyed? Anything?
I think Rajendra wants to say something. Yes, Rajendra.
Yeah. Other than Rajendra, yes, Rajendra, thank you for being so participative. But I'm sure others should also have a viewpoint on this. That what their HR HR should do. Yes, Rajendra, hi.
Ma'am, I just wanted to understand from you, since you interact with very senior level CEOs and management level people. Are HR people really empowered to contribute to these kind of decisions?
See,
are they engaged?
The decision is one thing. Implementing of the decision, the contribution can be made.
But are they really engaged in terms of their opinion as to what other options could be there when downsizing decision is taken by the top
Why
management?
was the HR not part of the whole thing when they could always talk about slowdown in hiring? They could talk about, natural attrition to reduce the number of positions in the organization. You stop filling up, taking replacements for those roles.
Right.
See, what happens is I always say that, Rajendra, that, an organization, this is the organization, the boss is here. So whatever the culture and of the organization is there. But if each one of us is a different department, as when we are leading a department, we always have this flexibility within the confines of the organization's value system to have our own subculture in place.
But then the example that you gave of a person who was rehired by the company with a 25-30% of high, this itself, I think that person also should have thought as to what are the moral values of the organization. When they want him, they call him.
This he is questioning now, but when he was called back, he must have thought that my organization is so caring that they thought of me for this role. They have brought me back. But I was, Rajendra, I was astounded when he was saying this, and I was quiet. I was quiet.
Very true.
Yeah. I'm sure safely he could have been, it's a huge organization. He could have been reabsorbed. But it's a narrow tunnel vision. This position doesn't exist, so you don't exist. So there is something called HR में हम लोग lateral movement की भी बात करते हैं. वो lateral move, where is that lateral movement now?
Very true.
I think that there's a question from Farooq ji, our senior member.
Farooq ji. Yes.
And then Murugunathan ji.
Yes.
Farooq ji, if you can unmute yourself and ask question or share your thought.
Mentioned about HR's role, but this totally
we are not able to hear you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Better.
A little louder, please.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned about HR's role, but HR's role basically depends on how much clout that is allowed to have in terms of top management. Where top management agrees to have HR at the necessary clout, things can happen. But otherwise, business results overcome everything else. People keep on telling HR, business ke liye you don't question it. And it's most organizations, there is lip service.
See, Farooq ji, business decisions also don't happen overnight, no, sir. If there is something that is not happening right, the writing is on the wall much earlier than the actual impact.
No,
and we also do it. Yeah.
How much is HR allowed to have cloud? Say for instance,
let us let's not use the word cloud, Farooq ji, but one can always have a viewpoint. And the first time they might not listen to me, but the second time they will realize that I have been proven right, where I said that let us now slow down on these things. Or as HR, if I say, okay, we are going ahead with this, but let us do it this way. HR, largely I'm talking about in companies, that is why they are, the HR head is given his or her fat pay package to contribute to these situations. HR is no longer a dummy in the organization, modern organizations, I'm saying.
According to me, still, it is the amount HR gives, top management gives preference to HR, which will determine. Otherwise, they give lip service. HR is required, HR is important.
But modern trend, Farooqji, modern organizations are changing. Now they say that we want HR in the boardroom.
Yes.
And I have seen it happening personally. Yes.
So
the traditional organizations, the smaller ones, the family businesses, I would like to refrain from commenting, yes. But otherwise, yes, everybody wants, because HR ka baki role to hai nahi, everything has been taken over by technology. So the administrative part of HR role no longer exists. But Farooqji, which means that, this kind of a change in HR's contribution, we have to start now implementing in smaller organizations also.
I think that answers. I think we can ask Mr. Muruganathan.
Sir, I have heard about unemployment insurance in countries like USA. I don't know how far they are successfully implemented. We can think of introducing unemployment insurance in our country also.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, Mr. Muruganathan, yes, in the introductory part of my session, I did mention something like unemployment support or insurance. And these are implemented so well that when, Mr. Muruganathan, when during pandemic in US and Canada, people lost their jobs, especially people who were in the lowly category of their roles. Once things opened up, their employers wanted them to come back to their job. They didn't want to come back because they were so happy with the unemployment benefits they were receiving from the state. So they decided, let's stay at home. This is a better scenario than going to work every day. So certainly they are implemented seriously, and it does take care of the needs of the family in the interim phase.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry. Now I move to the third and the final section of our conversation. That is from the employee's perspective. From the employee's perspective, I will give you a few stories. One story is a coachee, say about 53 years old, and senior position. So my first coaching session, when I was talking to him, so he told me that, Dr. Sareen, I already have a job in hand, but I have told them, it was around 20th December then, that, I will get back to you around first week of January. I said, okay. So I said, then, so he says that, in the meantime, I'm expecting some more roles also. Traditional, conservative machining industry. And I'm wondering, how this is happening. Then he tells me that actually, I'm financially very stable. I said, very good. Then in a while, as the conversation goes further, he says, my father had a business. I'm thinking of reviving that. I said, very good. And he told me that he has 2 children, and one is studying astrophysics and the other is studying medicine. So everything sounded so good. So I asked him that, Mr. X, how do I, as a coach, what support do you expect from me now? And he said that, Dr. Sareen, since I've got this news, I am very upset and I'm very depressed. So are my 2 children. Can you help me with that? So this is a response of a person who has, after the separation also, who has everything in place. And he tells me that he is depressed. So this is the impact of separation. And when, of course, when I was talking to him, it basically his ego got hurt that I spent 30 years with this organization and now suddenly I have been asked to go. So reasons could be many. Another coachee from IT, from Mumbai, I connected with him. And the first 20, 30 minutes, he was extremely angry. Even I was worried that how do I take this session forward? What do I talk to him, because he's not ready to listen to anybody. Then good sense prevailed and he talked. After a while, when he was out of breath, then I asked him, I said, can we reverse any of these things? He said, no. I said, is it worth it now to waste our time on these things? Or should we start thinking of what we need to do ahead? And that is how. And when he told me his story, he was right. He held a very senior position, a very good package, but he says that I have a housing EMI to pay. If I don't get a job in the next 3, 4, 5 months, that is what he claimed. I didn't go and check his accounts. I might have to dispose of this property. He has 2 children, 5 and 7 years old, so too young. Wife is not working, and both his parents are extremely unwell. Like one of them is actually suffering from cancer. And he told me that, about 8-10 days ago, both his parents were hospitalized. So, suddenly this person has his back against the wall. And my pact with him is that every time he's upset, he will just call me and we will talk. So, another example, young girl, 31 years old, IT, big name. So when I connected with her, of course, I knew she has lost a job, fat package. So then, generally, I do like, as a coach, like to check the profile that, you are 31, are you married? So she told me, yes, I was married and I lost my husband 6 months ago. He died at the age of 33. So, there are so many stories that one hears about, this grief of separation. So one thing is for sure, we always say, in case of death also, we always say, time is a great healer, time is a great healer. And that is how it happens. One doesn't forget the people, but one learns to live without them. Those memories will still remain. So all those things remain like that. But what happens is this, I'm sharing it with you, not that wishing that this happens to you, but we have to remember that grief has a cycle. It starts with denial, that it cannot happen to me, leads to anger, like in case of this Mumbai coachee. Then, of course, goes to bargaining, where we start praying to God, कि कर दोगे तो मैं 125 रुपए का प्रसाद चढ़ा दूंगी, मैं वहां पे मंदिर में आ जाऊंगी. So, we keep bargaining. Then we get into depression. And finally, it is acceptance. So in case any one of us faces a similar thing, so this cycle will follow. The shorter this cycle is, the quicker acceptance comes and the quicker the transition happens. Mental, I'm not talking about job related. Job related happens, when you get a job, when you get a suitable role. So the aim has to be that this transition should happen as early as possible and as smoothly as possible. So that is why, the companies do put in place, coaches and counselors, so as to help the person transition smoothly out of this separation grief. But it is a fact, and it is a fact. So, for this person in Mumbai, I helped him to transition out of anger. Presently, yes, he is still in the stage of depression. Yes, but he practically calls me every other day. And I, play the game along with him, just like a mother would be for a child, because I know this is the only support he needs from me. Otherwise, he has all the right skill set to get into his next role now. But the next role will take time to happen. For that gentleman, the senior gentleman, yes, I was able to, when I connected with him after 2 weeks or so, he says, Dr. Sareen, I have matured in these 2 weeks. Now I'm not feeling so upset. I said, no, you haven't matured. You are the same person. But yes, your cycle of grief is over now. So out of depression, you have moved to acceptance. And the third case, this girl has got a job. She has joined. She's got a very nice package. But my service with her ended. But she mentioned that I would want to be connected with you, because my personal grief cycle is still on. So of course she has to actually go to a counselor. But yes, as a human being and as a trained psychologist, I said anytime and every time you wish. So these are some natural responses, and they can happen to any one of us, but we need to learn to come out of them. So the good point is that finally everybody comes out of it. The lessons that I have learned is that retiring at the ripe old age of 60 is no longer a high probability. Mentally be prepared for that. Then only you will prepare for a long career. I think one of you pointed out, no, that this is the company is not our family and so on. So I would not get into so much of emotion of it, but I would like to say that do not focus employment, yes, but focus more on employability. Employment will keep getting breaks given the new industry trends. But if you maintain employability, then you will just take it in your stride. So focus on remaining employable. That should be the goal. Yes. Another thing I would like to point out is that the best way, God forbid if something like this happens, the best way to search for your next role is through your own contacts and reference. This is the industry trend today. Lesser and lesser positions get advertised. More of them get filled through contacts and reference, which means those of us who are from that old school, where is the time to network? Networking is important. People always crib WhatsApp world. I personally feel there is nothing wrong in it. At a click of a button, I can wish Happy New Year to so many people. Now, if I decide to spend my day on WhatsApp sharing jokes with people is a separate thing. But I find this technology wonderful to network these days. Free of cost, no time required. Networking has to be there. Okay, then when it comes to when I use the words that learned to maintain employability, I think somebody had said, I think Mr. Murugan had said, where he said that learning new skills and many skills becomes important. Am I right?
Yes, madam. I only told that one has to have different, specialize in different fields.
Yes. See, one thing is, especially those people who are from the tech industry, in their industry, skills get redundant and outdated very fast. So skill upgradation, yes, has to be a norm. Earlier, we used to use the word, company has arranged for training and development. Very conveniently, this word was changed to learning and development. We never even realized it. हमने सोचा English बदल गई. English नहीं बदल गई. The company is saying that the onus of upskilling lies on you, not on us. We have to ensure that, am I upgrading myself constantly to remain employable or not? There are very few professions left where the number of years of experience is considered a positive. Otherwise, in most professions, the older you are, the redundant you are, because people tend to believe that does not know anything about the new trends. In the same breath, I would also like to say, other than upskilling, multi-skilling is also a good option. So that, you have options available within the company, beyond the present role you are handling. And even in case of job search, it helps you to widen your job search. So that can be one very good option, especially true for the younger generation. Okay. And also, finally, always remain a keen learner and be adaptable. And one point that I would like to highlight, which I find very true, especially in senior profiles. Please have your CV and updated CV with you always, even if you're not looking for a job. Even if you need to get it professionally made, in most cases, there is no CV at all. Can we have some kind of a show of hands? How many of you have a ready CV? Suppose if you
I have a comment to make. I learned it quite early, that you should update your CV every 6 months.
Yeah.
And if you do not have to add anything in those 6 months, that means you're not learning enough. You will
very well said.
You will, over a period of time, you will
become redundant.
You will become redundant.
Yes. So this is a short thought from me. Now, regarding the employee's perspective, do we have more comments from our participants?
I have a request that you rightly touched upon this point of reskilling, and which is very relevant in today's VUCA world, and it is not that jobs are going here, so people will become jobless. It is not that, but jobs will be available somewhere else in some other function. So can you just explain to our participants little more on it, because this is the most relevant thing, because if a retrenchment or if the jobs have to go, they have to go. But then how do you tackle it? This is one of the very important points.
Rajesh, I missed out. Sorry. You said something about reskilling.
So I said, you mentioned about reskilling and upskilling in a different form earlier. So if you can just deliberate a little more and tell our participants more, because it's the most important thing in today's world.
Yeah. See, what happens is when I am in a particular role, working with a particular company, I know, this is my job. This is where I will get my monthly salary. If I'm a good performer, I will keep getting my increments. So I start taking this for granted. But the moment this particular role stops for me, and when I start going out looking for something, then that person is looking at me not as in continuation that Meenu was working with Bombay Management Association. They are looking at me from the perspective of a fresh candidate. So then even if I try and tell them, I did my MBA from XYZ place, but then they say that you did it 20 years ago. So that, upskilling is in continuity with the field to which I belong. And it can be I acquire skills, or if I, like in today's session, I am a knowledge giver, but I'm upskilling myself. I am reaching out to the community. So that kind of upskilling and multi-skilling is, when I started my career 30 plus years ago, I used to teach pure psychology in St. Xavier's College, Mumbai. But then multi-skilling is, but it doesn't mean that from a psychologist, then I become a finance expert, but it means adding more skill sets from the field to which we belong. And to give a very relevant example from my personal life, I used to always say that teacher ki job to kabhi khatam hi nahi ho sakti, because we are a billion of 1.4. We are a nation of 1.4 billion people. And come pandemic, the teaching assignments were less because, they were online classes. The student registration in MBA programs was less. And then suddenly, because jobs started going, then I became a more popular career transition coach. So, but if you have multi-skilled, then, you have your, interests covered, and you keep going. So that is why, these two things, I feel that, the focus has to be, because otherwise we will just die out. People will just say that this person is too outdated. Ask me. I sometimes think that should I say that I have over 30 years of experience? And then I say, why not? And still prove it that, I am aware of the new trends.
Thank you. And if there are some more thoughts from the audience,
otherwise
we will welcome. Yes, we will welcome. I think we had a very nice session, and so I will just if there are no other thoughts, then we come to the end of the session. So thank you very much, Meenuji, for a very practical and very conversational discussion and also presentation, which talks about in-depth knowledge and your insightful thinking to this. And on the reskilling which you talked, I also feel that this is the only thing which you have within your control, which you can do, which can help you to respond to whatever happens around you. So this is one thing which can actually help everybody to handle any kind of situation. So thank you very much for this session. We look forward to you for more engagements with you. And also Supriya wants to ask you, she wants to ask you something.
Tell me.
Can you unmute and
yes, hello. Hello.
Hi,
hello,
Supriya, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you so much for such an interesting and engaging session. I'm sorry I cannot be visible right now, but I was constantly tuned into what you were sharing. Everything, and the best part was that you shared it from multiple perspectives. You had the organizational perspective, the employee perspective, and everything, and plus your own experience that you bring to the table. And I'm sure the audience must have they from where they are in their life, at whatever point they are, they will definitely have some or the other takeaway. And in fact, I'd like to reiterate what you mentioned and what Rajesh sir just now summarized also, that reskilling is something which is there in our hands. But I'll also add that networking is also in our hands. And like you rightly said, that forms the backbone of how one progresses through the career. Coming from a technology background myself, because I started my career and I spent 10 years in the IT industry, I also made a bold move of moving into the field of marketing. And trust me, the confidence was, of course, my own way of skilling and everything. But the fact that I had built a good network gave me a lot of confidence and reassurance that I know I can always tap that whenever needed.
Yeah, because somebody will come forward to hold your hand then.
Yes. And communities like
of profile is very important.
Absolutely. And communities like, for people ask, what do you get when you join any association, any organization, like for example, Bombay Management Association. But I feel, forget about what business benefit you get out of it. We are not here for that. We are here for connecting with each other. We are here for community. And that is what really gives us a lot of confidence also.
Yes.
So thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you very much. And
thank you.
Thanks participants for being patient and listening very, very attentively. Thank you, BMA Secretariat, for being so helpful in organizing these events successfully. Just to mention that on 10th and 11th of February, we are conducting 2-day HR conference where all the bigwigs, all CHROs of the conglomerates, they are coming to deliberate on the most recent topics like moonlighting and quiet quitting and new age employee mindset. So my request to participants is, please register yourself for this. Is a paid event. You can get in touch with Supriya or Andrilla to get yourself registered. You will be immensely benefited with this I can assure you. So thank you very much, Meenuji, once again.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.